is it sunrise or not?
Not at all. I don't agree with you.
Turn his mic off. Get out.
Wow.
Well, maybe that's why Greg Locke doesn't do many debates. Recently, there was a debate between Greg Locke and Dean Odle. I think I'm saying his name right. Now, in this case, I agree with Greg Locke. Greg Locke is 100% correct. However, his mannerisms and his approach leaves a little bit to be desired. Now, this other person believes that the earth is flat. Greg Locke believes the truth. The earth is not flat. It's one of those things that is just becoming more and more popular. I don't know how many people, not a lot, but more people are holding on or believing this notion that the earth is flat, which is honestly just preposterous. You would think that some nation, if this were true, that some nation would decide, let me step out of the conspiracy. But there is not one nation, not one credible science group that has come out and stated that, yes, this is true. No one who has the ability to send objects in the earth to orbit, which, by the way, makes you ask, how then do these satellites, these other things, stay in orbit if the earth were flat? If the earth were flat, they would not stay in orbit because there's nothing to orbit around. But that's one of the many issues that the flat earthers have to deal with. The fact that also, if it's a flat earth, well, then what happens when you get to the edge? Well, then somebody is guarding the edge of it. Some say that maybe NASA is guarding the edge of it. Yeah, NASA. So what happens when someone who does not hold to the authority of NASA, you know, like China or Russia or someone else who doesn't hold to or is under the authority or the auspice or any sort of control of the United States? It's just silly and laughable. But the fact of the matter is that you're having a debate. I think it's funny. One of the things that they talk about is this issue of the earth or the spirit hovering over the face of the earth. Let's go to it real quick. In Genesis 1, it says the earth was formless and void, and darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was moving over the surface of the waters. Now, one of the points that was brought up was this issue about over the face. Sometimes the translations that might be used might not be the best English translated word, and this word that's used here for hovering over the surface of the deep, this is Greek. This Hebrew word was al-Pani, which is just before, in front of, the face of. Doesn't mean like a face. And so the person, this Dean, is arguing that it's speaking of a flat surface. Well, he's wrong.
When the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, that doesn't mean that he went from one side to the other across all the flatness of the earth. They love to use that word face. My brother did it a moment ago. The face of the waters. And so what he does here is he says, that's a geometrical flat surface. The face of the sky, that's a geometrical flat surface. Really? A couple things about that. Number one, you ever seen the face of a mountain? That's not a geometrical flat surface. You ever seen your own face? Like, look in the mirror.
The problem is, though, Greg's response in it is not theologically sharp. Now, Greg does make a few points when he uses these different analogies as regarding faces and so forth. The face of a mountain, person's face, and they're not flat. But just use the word there. The Hebrew word will suffice to kind of prove your point. But where it goes off the rail is at the end.
You know, when we came this weekend, I was hoping that things would stay sweet and nice between us, but it's not the case. And so what I did was I rented a room at the Marriott for tomorrow morning if anybody wants to come have church with Fire and Grace Church.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not going to sit here under this kind of belligerent attacks and calling people names and stuff like that. I'm just not going to, I can't come back here because of it.
Okay.
All right. But
so you can do it, but I can't be abrasive. And because then that hurts everybody's feelings. That's okay. I get it. I get it.
Hold on a second.
I get it.
Has anybody, I've never called you a clown. You called, when you got up talking about this a few weeks ago, you said...
Hey, quit saying a few weeks ago. That was the first time I ever even mentioned it. I'm talking about tonight.
Tonight you have been insulted. And I wanted to keep it nice. And listen, let me say this very clearly.
You told me that I was involved in a deception.
You are.
And then when I say it, you're like, oh my goodness,
that's fine.
My feelings are hurt.
We believe each other's deceived in there. That's fine. But when you say moronic, idiotic, when you start going down...
I didn't call you or anybody that. I said we attack ideologies. And as far as I'm concerned, the ideology is moronic. It's always a mistranslation when it doesn't fit your side. It's always a mistranslation.
The actual Hebrew word is mazalah, which means constellations, not planets. And that's a fact.
And that's not a fact.
Then you're deceived. All right?
If me being deceived means I believe in a spherical earth, I'm deceived, and you can just go ahead and leave and cancel this debate right now, because you're not going to convince me what the Bible clearly says. The earth is not flat, 1,000%, and if I got people in our church that think it is, that's great. I love you, but if you want to go to his little service in the morning, then go to his service in the morning. It's not going to bother me one bit. The earth is not flat. It was disproven 2,500 years ago. You can't show me one verse in the Bible that proves that the earth is flat. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. We're not going to get anywhere else, because here's the problem. You use 2 hours of PowerPoint presentation, and your people are quiet. I use an hour and 15 minutes of the Bible, and they get mad and start throwing maters and taters at me. Okay? I gave you the Bible interpretation.
I gave you the Bible. I gave more Bible than you did, for a fact, right there. All right.
Oh, really?
That's a fact.
Well, I'll tell you what. How about in your rebuttal, I'll keep my mouth shut, and you tell me how wrong I was about your misapplication of the ring stamping in Job chapter 38.
First of all...
Hello? Is it sunrise or not?
Not at all. I don't agree with you.
Turn his mic off. Get out.
Wow.
You're a Bible denier. You're a Bible denier. You're a Bible denier. If you go to this church and you're upset about me taking the Bible in its context and dealing with it, and you're going to keep sowing that discord, don't ever come back. That's all I'm going to tell you right now. I'm not listening.
Now, there have been some words bannered back and forth, name calling and so forth, and then calling a person's position moronic or idiotic. Well, you might want to pull back on that if you're going to have a debate with the person in front of the person, but that's fine. If you want to have it to be fiery and so forth. But the problem is when you kick him off the stage. Now, he does respond back, throw the mic at him, and Greg knocked it down. That's where the whole thing it becomes childish. Let me just say this to both of those people and everyone else. The Bible says in 1 Corinthians 10:31, this is a passage that should govern us all three of these passages, whether you eat or whether you drink or whether you're having a debate. Do it all to the glory of God. Why? Well, because people are watching. It says, give no offense either to the Jews or to the Greeks or to the church of God. To the unbeliever, to the believer, those inside of the church, outside of the church. Well, this does. This is not a good look. He says, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of the many, so that the many may be saved. In other words, somebody's watching, and so we do this in hopes that someone can hear and see once see our light shine, as Jesus says, glorify God. Same thing here. We don't want to give an offense. This was the ending was childish. Now, this was, 3-4 hours, a pretty long debate, slides and so forth showing, going through different scriptures. I think the Bible's clear. I think science is clear. This is where the Bible and science harmonizes. The earth is a sphere. There's a circle of the earth. It is round. And science has proved it. Has the Bible come out and said definitively in the verbiage or the language that a flat earther would want it to say? No, but that's not the point. Science does enough for us, and so we're good there. Science and the Bible do not contradict. I think true science doesn't contradict, and so there is no issue. But that's not the point. The point is how the debate was handled and the childish behavior really on both parts. And so maybe this is why Greg Locke doesn't debate, because you got to have a good control of your emotions. You're a pastor, after all. I think the other person's a pastor also. Both of you ought to be ashamed of yourself.